Hey everybody, welcome back to Fish Den 365. I'm Den Haring, and today we're going to be talking about spinnerbait fishing. So I was out on my local lake on Good Friday and fishing out there. And when I got to the lake, I found that the water was quite muddy. It actually looked like coffee with cream. Almost everywhere I looked on the lake, the water had that color to it. So when I saw that, I immediately started to think about, well, what kind of presentations were most likely to be effective. The first thing is the water's warming up. We had some warm days ahead of it, and Friday was fairly warm as well. So that's telling me the fish should be moving up. The water's muddy. Again, when you have muddy water, generally you're going to be fishing shallow because and you're going to be fishing cover-oriented items, rock, stumps, that kind of thing, weeds, and you're going to be fishing shallow. This is how you handle muddy water in general. And then you have to think about, well, what baits are you going to use? You got to have something that the fish are more likely to sense. So thinking about that, I was thinking square bill crankbait, lipless crankbait, a chatterbait, and a spinnerbait. And I have a lot of confidence in a square bill crankbait, and out of those methods, I probably prefer to fish that. So I started out with a square bill, and I fished that square bill probably for 45 minutes to an hour, just covering different areas, different water. I fished shallow water with the square bill, and I didn't get bit on it. And then I decided to change the square bill over to this spinnerbait, and on the very first cast with the spinnerbait, I got bit. I didn't get a hook into the fish. So I reeled that spinnerbait in, tried it again, nothing. Then I threw a swim bait out there, and I caught that fish on the swim bait, and it was the same fish that tried to eat the spinnerbait. But that told me what I needed to know to change over from that square bill to the spinnerbait. And then from then, it was pretty simple. It was just cover a lot of water. Pick out a good confidence spinnerbait, which that's what I did. Covered a ton of water with it and worked out a decent day for myself. I got several bass. One of them was a giant and it was really a lot of fun to catch. That was my last fish. I waited till the end of the day to catch that one, but it was a fish that I'll remember for the rest of my life. It was just a really good fish, and it was a lot of fun catching it. Turns out that as I was fighting the fish and about ready to net it, my battery died on the camera. But fortunately, I had a second camera, so when I checked the camera after I landed the fish, I just flipped on the other camera and was able to show you the fish. You'll be seeing it in a little bit. So take a look. Here's how I fished for most of the day. You know, notice what I'm doing with the spinnerbait, the kind of places that I'm throwing it at. You're going to notice that it's mostly rock. I did try stumps. I tried wood. I tried the different wood posts that are in the lake. They didn't seem to be relating to the wood nearly as much as the rock that was in shallow water, and that's where I caught the majority of my fish. Another male on a spinnerbait. You know, I just fixed the spinnerbait, straightened it out so it would fish straight. Just got done doing that, and this one bit. Best one so far today. Let's put it back. Sweetheart. Well, that just made the day a little better. Shallow. That fish was shallow. I thought it was a rock. Coming in. Another male. That was one shallow bass. All right. back, but I just caught this pig on the spinnerbait. Look at this guy. He's a big one. You can see her tail's beat up. Is she spawning? It's not red. Did she try and spawn and stop and now is going back up? I don't know. But this one, look at the gut on that. She's a beautiful fish. I'm going to put her back. Spinnerbait. So the spinnerbait that I was using was a Nichols pulsator, a double willow leaf spinnerbait, 1/2 ounce. I believe the skirt is called Blue Glimmer. It's whitish with a little bit of bluish in it. And the willow leaf blades are gold, but they're a little worn out. This is an older spinnerbait, and some of the gold plating had come off. So there's a little bit of silver in there too. So the blades ended up looking like a little bit of silver and a little gold mixed. And then I put a trailer on this bait, and that was a Megabass Hazardong shad. And I found that after doing some experimentation, that shad on the back of this bait looks really good. The tail, the thump of the tail seems to match the thump and the spin of the blades. And so it really looks like a nice profile in the water. The color of that Hazardong shad is called Tennessee shad, and it has that nice sparkle and shad look to it. So it gives the spinnerbait a very nice shad profile look. And that is, I simply take the bait and a knife and I just cut the head right behind the eye. And that gives me a flat surface so that I can thread that on the spinnerbait hook. And it's very, very important that when you thread that on the spinnerbait hook, that it comes out exactly straight through the back. So you want that hook coming right through the center point. And on this particular bait, there's a seam. So you can kind of follow the hook through and make sure it comes out the seam. That way it's centered on the back. And that will balance your spinnerbait and allow you to fish it straight through the water, which is very important. A couple things in general about fishing a spinnerbait. I just like to go basic with it. I did not use a trailer hook. I had a trailer on the bait. If I had no trailer on the bait, if I wasn't using that Hazardong shad, then I'd put a trailer hook on there. But with the Hazardong shad on there, I just felt that the bait was better balanced without adding a trailer hook onto that, and that they were more likely to grab the whole bait with the shad on there anyway. So you could put a trailer hook above the shad, but it sometimes will throw the bait off balance. And to me, it's more important when you're throwing a spinnerbait to have this thing track straight back to the boat. So when you're pointing your rod at the bait and retrieving that bait back, you want to make sure that it's coming straight, that it's not leaning this way or leaning this way. And if it is, you want to straighten it out. So that might entail bending this lead, this wire that's coming off of the lead head, so that it comes back straight. Sometimes you just have to experiment. If it's coming back this way, then you might want to bend it this way to straighten that out. But it's very important in spinnerbait fishing to make sure that that spinnerbait is tracking true, that it's always coming straight. And I like to find a spinnerbait that comes through the water horizontally like this. Sometimes you'll see them come through like this as you're fishing certain spinnerbaits. I don't like that because the attitude just isn't right. You know, you want this bait, especially the tail, to be coming through the water horizontally, and that's one of the reasons why I chose the Nichols. The pulsator is a very good spinnerbait that way. It comes through real nicely. Now the one thing I add to the pulsator, and I can send a link up here with that, I put a piece of heat shrink tubing on the very tip of the bait here, and that allows me to use a snap and utilize a snap with fishing this. The snap really doesn't do anything for the action of the bait. It just allows me to change it easier. So I had a situation where I didn't have enough leader on my other rod. I had the right pound test that I could throw a square bill crankbait on this, and when I was done, I just took it off and put this on there. It makes it real fast for me. So I then fished the spinnerbait. The only thing you have to be aware of when you're throwing a spinnerbait with a snap like this is if you're using lighter line that is not very stiff, sometimes when you throw the bait, it could tumble and wrap around, and you don't want that because that throws it off balance. So you want to make sure that you have maybe a heavier pound test. 17 is usually what I use, 15 to 17. A little bit of a stiff monofilament or a stiff fluorocarbon, and that way you're less likely to have that spin or wrap happen. And the advantage, of course, is that I can change baits quickly if I want to, or even change the weight of the spinnerbait or to a different spinnerbait. So after that one fish missed, I caught several, and they all took the bait very well. They grabbed the hold of it. Some of them were smaller males, and they just bit it real hard. And then the two bigger fish that I got, I could just feel them sucking it in. And you just want to make sure you just continue reeling as you feel that happening. Once you feel that weight, that's when you pull back and set the hook. Always want to make sure your hooks are sharp. You can sharpen these hooks very easily with a file, but to make sure they're sharp, you should not be able to run it across your thumb. It should stick to your thumb, and that's how you know it's sharp enough to stick a bass's jaw. So in general, this is a good time of year to fish spinnerbaits, when that water is in the mid-50s all the way into the 60s. When it's at the low 50s, you can start throwing a spinnerbait and start expecting to catch fish on it. On this particular day, I found temperatures from 57 degrees Fahrenheit to 63, depending on where I was fishing and what section of the lake. And it didn't matter. They were fishing both those sections. They were fishing the section that had the lower water temperature, and then there were fish in the section that had that was a little warmer. I did find that it seemed like the warmer water had more of those male bass close into the shore, the smaller ones. But when you have water temperatures like that, and when you have that water that's a little off color, the way we had that with that coffee with cream look to it, spinnerbait is a really good choice. And on that particular day, I really feel it was one of the better choices. I never did throw a chatterbait, because once I picked this up and started getting bit on it, there didn't seem to be a reason to throw a chatterbait, because I was getting bit on this, and the fish were biting it good. They were hooked good and deep in their mouth, so they really were committing to the bait. Once I find that, it's not wise to change unless the bite starts to change. Unless they start nipping at it, or you don't catch any anymore, then maybe it's time to change and try something else. But that didn't happen for me. It was just a good spinnerbait bite. This is a great time of year to fish spinnerbaits. I do think that fish get conditioned to these baits over time, and I feel that spring is the absolute best time to fish these overall. And that's because you go through winter. People are not typically throwing spinnerbaits through the winter time. There's a whole lot less activity on the water, less fishing on the water in the winter. A lot of times there's ice on the water, so fish aren't going to be seeing a spinnerbait when there's ice in the water. And so when you have that ice out situation and the water starts warming up through the 40s and then into the 50s especially, that's when this thing is really good. And I do think that over time, like by the time you get to post-spawn, I think fish get used to seeing these, and they start to sometimes avoid the bait a little bit. The other time I like to throw this bait is I like to throw a bigger spinnerbait very deep. I like to slow roll it in deep water. I'm talking 12 to 20 feet deep if I can get it down that deep. In the middle of summer, sometimes that could be a good technique. And then again, this bait comes into play again in the fall. But the best time to fish it overall is in the spring, right now actually. And so if you have a spinnerbait and you'd like to give it a try, this is the best time of year to give it a shot. When retrieving a spinnerbait, it's good to experiment with that a little bit too. So I was throwing this in shallow water, so as soon as it was hitting the water, I was starting my retrieve because I didn't want to hang it up on the bottom. But I was retrieving it slow. I wanted to give the fish a good opportunity to see those blades, to feel that vibration, and to come over and grab it. So it was a slow retrieve for most of the time when I was fishing this on Friday, and I would often stop it and start it again. So that bait would land in the water close to the bank. I'd start that slow retrieve. When it got a little closer to me, I'd stop it, start it, stop it. That's just stopping the blades and making them go again, and making it look like there's something wrong with the bait, like it's sick or injured or not quite right. And that draws those strikes. Bass are predators, and when they see something weak, it's like a lion picking out a weak gazelle in the herd, and bass do the same thing. They're going to pick out the food that's easiest for them to grab and catch and eat. They're programmed to do that, and so that's what you're trying to imitate with the spinnerbait by using that stop and go. And so I might reel the handle 7, 8, 9 times and then stop just momentarily and then go right back to it. Every now and then I might use the rod tip to pulse it forward, or I may turn the reel handle faster for a few turns, just to make it look a little different, just to keep it coming back with a little bit of, so that it's not so monotonous on the way back. But sometimes the best retrieve is to just retrieve it as slow as you can and just keep it coming slow, and they'll grab onto it that way many times as well. You just have to experiment to see what the fish want on any particular day. Well, if you found the video helpful and you liked the video, please give me that thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. When you do, ring that bell. That'll give you a notification when my next video is available. Don't forget, this Tuesday will be Topwater Tuesday, so we'll be putting out another Topwater Tuesday and a great topwater video for you then. Until then, good luck on the water. Hope to see you out there, and may God bless your fishing endeavors.